a medley of voices. It has been a wonderful journey with you all. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the way life and times are perceived and left an unerasable impact on the history of the planet. This series of national webinars had aimed to explore the pandemic from multiple directions, unearthing its effects in varied domains. This series aimed at providing a platform to young speakers who have excelled in various walks of life to put through a medley of voices that offered uncharted perspectives on the effects of the global pandemic on human life and times, and highlight individual and collective mechanisms to deal with and survive it all, and thus make a difference by projecting a fresh perspective. Some of you have joined us for one or some webinars, while some others have been with us all through. We thank each and every one of you. For the first half of our session today, I would request Riddhi, who was also one of our speakers in the webinar series, to moderate the session. Over to you, Riddhi.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
All right. So hi, I'm Riddhi, Assistant Professor at the Department of Communicative English, Ashutosh College, and your host for the first half of the valedictory session today. So without further delay, let us just begin by playing the Kulgeet of the Yale Foundation. Can we have the Kulgeet played? Can we have the Kulgeet played, please?
Gayatri bhaiya, you're supposed to play the Kulgeet, right? Dr. Jain, am I audible? Hello?
Session that we are going to have so far as the National Webinar in Youth Series is concerned from the Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation. I have a gala heart, and I would say, of course, without any doubt, that I am going to welcome one of the most beautiful evenings that we all are going to spend together. Academically toned, of course, with pragmatic shift and culmination of the so far deliberation made towards a window, and opening a window, of course, to look the contemporaneity of the resources, thought processes, topics, and their relevance to national entrepreneurial identities. And yes, we do it in it together with a large group of people, not less than, of course, 32 to 34 esteemed members of the foundation, Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation, Lucknow, is today, this evening, is, of course, with distinguished speakers. I would again repeat, distinguished speakers, as Riddhi introduced the person that we have, the professor of English, a distinguished professor of English that we have, and of course, Miss Rashi Lal, looking after the desk at the Times of India, the largest daily read in the nation, and the authenticated, the kind of the authentication that we get from the Times of India is needless to acknowledge so far as its reception to the nationwide is concerned. So far as these distinguished speakers are concerned, I'm sure my audience today would agree with me the kind of the fame and repute which they carry, and that too at such an ease that define, the fame that they carry, the repute they carry, define them so beautifully in their unique terms of the intellect, creativity, and energy, and of course the space that they have, and in fact they deserve all kind of appreciation and inspiration to conjure up the best ideas and the roles that impart all nobility, positivity, and mirror images and individual, specifically a youth, look up to. Extending greeting to all scholars, participants, the youth, specifically the resource persons of the 13 national webinars youth series, and all beautiful heart, mind, and soul across the nation and wide. I, on behalf of the Board of Advisors, that consists of esteemed people, esteemed scholars, academicians, and noted dignitaries from another esteemed colleague of mine, Professor O.M. Eto from Lucknow State University, Nigeria, on behalf of Dr. Someshwar Singh, an innovation engineer from Michelin, Canada, and on behalf of Maximilian Alexandro, Indonesia, and on my own behalf, on my personal behalf, extending personal regards and greetings to the people, to the distinguished speakers that we have today. I, on behalf of Chairman, Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, Professor Ravindra Pratap Singh, on behalf of Organizing Secretary Dr. Niloy Mukherjee, Assistant Professor at Infratech University, Calcutta, on behalf of Dr. Arun, who is again Assistant Professor in the UP Higher Education Services, on behalf of Riddhi Saha, Assistant Professor, Ashutosh College, again in Calcutta, and on behalf of so many of our own resource person who has immensely contributed to the youth series, the so many unique webinars that we had on the reflections on the pandemic, a true medley of voices, I would say. I heartily welcome, I welcome from the core of my heart distinguished speaker, Professor Nishi Pandey and Ms. Rashi Lal. Professor Nishi Pandey as we already know that she has been former head. She is a professor of English, and apart from that, she carries so many designations, so many positions that she had held in her colossal period of professorship, that it's very difficult. In fact, when Niloy asked me to introduce Professor Nishi Pandey, I was thinking that how to introduce a lady who is, beyond a few lines that could have been written on a piece of paper to define the paper scholarship, without going into the kind of the insights and the feeling that she had out of the giant scholarship that she had, and the kind of the contribution that she did to the academics and other administrative part of the University of Lucknow, and or I would say not the University of Lucknow, but also the other parts of the narratives and the establishments that we have in the society, in the country, and across. So far as Miss Rashi Lal is concerned, as news assistant news editor, The Times of India, we know the kind of the work The Times of India the Times of India does for the society, the kind of the authentication of the news, and how difficult it is, to procure the best editorials that we have in the country, so far as the issues or the pertinent issues towards the implementation of the policies, towards the saga of the stories, the narrations, the stories that have helped the people to live life is concerned. So far as the formal introduction of Professor Nishi Pandey is concerned, in the first part of the initializing valedictory speech, the 14th session, the valedictory session is concerned, I would, before going into a formal kind of the setup and the introduction that she carries at such an ease, I would update Professor Nishi Pandey with a little of information or a couple of information that this youth series e-seminar in the past had. Ma'am, very cordially, I share with you that Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, from India, from right onwards, from September 28 till today, 11th October, before the valedictory session, we had the last session, which was organized on so many aspects and the perspective that the pandemic, has, and still is into before it culminates, to reflect upon the prospects of the researchers and the pedagogies that one should have to adopt and promote or enhance the entrepreneurial activities that the nation is looking forward to for the development of the society and human society at large. Ma'am, we have been talking about pandemic, the startup in this industry's key survival, which was a lecture from Shubhajit Das. We had pandemic morality and dharma from Bhavya Arora. We had pandemic Parsi literature and sustainable development from Sumita Dwivedi. We talked about pandemic and the rule of law via Vibhu Banerjee. We talked about pandemic economic crisis and labor law reforms from Ravi Shankar Jha. We had pandemic and the work-life pandemonium from Panchami Bhattacharjee. We have pandemic and the new normal feelings that the people had so far as the youth anxiety is concerned from Dr. Scholars in the country and abroad. She is not only the Coordinator Center for Cultural Text Records Translation of Indian Literature, she is also Director, International Collaborations member. Recently, we know a lot of discussion, debates in the country going on, national education policy. It is very interesting, and again, something very, very important to share the audience today, the media today, that she is one of the important, significant member, Chief Minister's Task Force for Implementation of National Education Policy 2020 in Uttar Pradesh. In fact, we are very, very kind, to tell, this is something that I would like to share, that she has been very kind to us, that in spite of her busy schedule today itself, that she had been a part of a session that was scheduled at 5, I think, for the implementation of chapter 22 and 23 as so far as national education policy in the country is concerned, with reference to the 20 workshop programs that the nation has looked into in the past and is still now. Ma'am has been also the Dean Student Welfare, and she enjoyed the office from 2006 to 10. She, of course, is the first women chief proctor, which we women take pride at, and I personally feel, elevated to share you all that she is the first women appointee. She is the first one to enjoy all these post director, planning and development board, international student advisor, chief provost, and of course we all know her significant contribution to the HRDC university. Important, it's a body, it's an institution which is very, very important for any university, whether it's a state or center. She has been the director UGC Academic Staff College, which we now call HRDC, and she is also coordinator internal quality assurance cell, which for any teacher is so very important when it comes to the promotions strategies and other aspects that we all look up to develop oneself individually and collectively. Professor Nishil Pandey, the areas of specialization, of course, is not one when we look up at her colossal field of professorship and the kind of the contribution she has been doing, still is doing, and then so much to.
Ricky, were you going to speak first?
No, ma'am. Ma'am, please continue. Please continue, ma'am.
Good evening to everyone, and I especially want to thank all of you for inviting me here. I cannot tell you how happy and delighted I am that you all have taken the initiative to set up this foundation so that you can do work in the area of cultural studies. Of course, I was busy, but that doesn't mean that I would not make time for you, because this is more dear to me than anything else that I'm required to do. And when Alka requested, I felt that I was duty bound to do it. Alka being one of my very dear students, your president being a dear student and a colleague. Can I just say how overwhelmed I am by this long introduction? And Alka, you needn't have done that, but I'm really grateful that for all the time you've taken and bored the life out of
Pleasure is all mine, ma'am. Pleasure is all ours.
All the people. So let me quickly come to the topic. I was asked to talk on mass energy and elevation, youth and pandemic. And Alka had outlined, I said, look, mass energy and elevation are both scientific terms. So I got an explanation that when I talk of mass energy, I talk of the youth, the challenges and the prospects in the pandemic. And when I talk of elevation, I would be talking about the spirit, the sustenance, the courage, and the livelihood issues. So I've tried to say to you through this that when we talk of mass energy, we talk of the youth challenges, we talk of the prospects, and we talk of the pandemic. Now, over the period of time that you've been involved in this seminar, I'm sure that the pandemic is something that you've had a long discussion about. And that's not something that I need to go into. But these are unprecedented times. And in these unprecedented times, what is going to happen is that there's going to be such a phenomenal change in the world around you that even though we are going through it and we can see the changes happening, most of us are not willing to acknowledge that those changes are going to come along. But they are coming along. And in time to come, those changes are something with which you will have to grapple. Now, at the moment when when I want to talk of mass energy, I want to talk about three things. One is, I would call it mastery. The second is purpose. And the third is autonomy. I've divided it into these three small sections. But before these things, why have I divided it into these three sections? Because these three things address the mass anxiety of the youth during this pandemic. The pandemic has confined us to our homes, taken us away from known spaces. We've had to create newer spaces. We've had to create spaces in the world, in the virtual world. We've become more and more isolated. We've not been able to physically meet with people. Virtually meeting with people is not the same as being in the same physical space. So the pandemic has caused this great, great anxiety in the youth of today. What is it that makes the youth anxious? The youth becomes anxious about its future. The youth becomes anxious about possibilities for employment. Youth becomes anxious about how they're going to earn money, what's going to happen. The economy seems to be collapsing around them. What is going to happen? What direction is our life going to take? And what is it that we should do? So all these issues are reasons for creating panic. And within this framework of the pandemic and the way we've been confined to our homes, the way that we've been limited, the way that newer opportunities are coming, and we have to break away from old models which we thought as opportunities and to keep seeking newer ones, to keep learning to cope up with the newer ones. That's a huge, huge challenge before the youth, and it bothers the youth very much. But within this framework, we have to understand, how is it that the young adults and the institutions will have to work? What is it that other adults and the institutions can do to help the youth to define their areas of mastery, to define what should be their purpose, and to define how autonomy should work for them? And institutions can do this by setting up good role models. But how does the youth go about it? And I would like to spend some time to talk to you about what it is that you should be doing during this time. What should young people be doing? So the first thing when I talk about mass energy when I talk about youth today, is to tell you that you have to utilize this time for mastery. Mastery of what? You have to master a discipline to which you wish to dedicate yourself in the future. And along with the mastery of that discipline that you choose, within that, you have to look at interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and so many other related disciplines or minor disciplines which you will need to gain mastery over, so that it gives you different skill sets. Now, here I would like to talk about something that a word that everybody constantly uses, that, we have to be creative. We have to be creative. Youth should become more creative. The pandemic is a time to be more creative. Now, what kind of creative and academic engagement must youth involve itself with? What kind of activity is it going to be that shall provide energy and to the youth? And the energy of the youth needs to be encouraged during this time. Now, we keep using and bandying this word creativity such a lot. What is creativity? Creativity is not just an artistic expression, that if you wrote a poem or you made a painting or you wrote a piece of literature or wrote a fiction, that's just not creativity. Activity and extracurricular activities which can make their mind more vibrant and more responsive. It is something that youth needs to think about. So academics is not simply for the purpose of pursuing a source of pursuing a course because you need to get employed. But academics is a way to better understand the world around you. You choose any subject, whether you're a physics person or a literature person or any person. Every discipline has a component which is a humanizing factor. Every discipline has a humanizing factor. Are you able to reach that core humanizing content or that core humanizing factor within your discipline. That is of prime importance. And that is what the youth needs to focus on. Whatever discipline you are looking at, please do explore what is the humanizing, humanistic aspect. So if you're studying physics, or you're studying sociology, or you're studying history, look at that which impacts human life. Look at that part of your discipline that can transform human life. Look at that part of your discipline which is going to create for you an opportunity to creatively look at the world around you. That is important. So please understand that academics does not have to be pursued simply to get yourself a job. Academics is also about it. When you think of how that discipline can build your creativity, I've just outlined for you how that is possible. The second thing is the purpose. Now, for the youth, the greatest challenge is, and in the pandemic is, how do you use the discipline in which you're getting mastery? And how do you acquire those additional skills to define identity and direction? To define your own identity and the direction in which you need to go. So the purpose of any kind of mastery that you're seeking in a major subject or a minor subject at the moment, when you're studying or not studying or whatever you're pursuing, some element of academic activity that you're doing, or that you're skilling yourself or reskilling yourself or upskilling yourself, utilizing this time or taking on additional add-on courses, whatever you're doing, you have to be able to understand for what purpose are you doing it? How do you desire to use that discipline? And how additional skills you need to, how you need to acquire additional skills and skill sets, which can help you to define your identity and can also give you direction when you decide what you have to do. And we come to the third part, which is autonomy. Now, autonomy is the ability and the desire to approach a problem independently. To expect that everybody else should come in and help you, or that the government should help you, the university should help you, your teacher should help you, your parents should help you. What the youth needs to understand today within the pandemic situation is that autonomy is very important. You have the choice in your hands to decide. You have the ability and you should have the desire to approach your problems independently. You can seek help, but you are the one who has to take hold of your life to decide what you want to do with it, to decide what direction you will go in. There will be people to help you. There will be people who are going to give you direction, but it is you who has to think about what it is that you want to do. So these are the challenges before you. What disciplines do you want to master? For what purpose do you want to do it? And what is going to be, how autonomous are you going to be? How independent are you going to be in the process of taking to push you in the direction for getting yourself a livelihood? And for this, I will take you very quickly to something that I love to talk to the young people about and would like to share with you, is the concept of compassion. Compassion for people and planet during the corona crisis is very important. And from compassion, I will bring you to the point, create the pain of others. Now, according to Lampert's theory, compassion is universal. And it stands at the root of all the when you look at the historical cries that there have been in the world for change and social change, it is rooted in compassion. It is compassion which led for women's rights movements. It is compassion which pushes for the rights of the blacks and for equality. It is all human rights cries in the world are driven by compassion. So compassion is universal, and it stands at the root of the cry, that every single cry that has historically been made and shouted out for social change. In the pandemic, we again will cry. A cry will come, and it has to come for social change, because social change is coming whether we like it or not. So compassion, therefore, manifests itself as an impulse. But, it stands in stark opposition to the Darwinistic theories where survival instinct determines human behavior. And it also stands in contrast to the Freudian logic of the pleasure principle. So if you have any natural tendency as a part of a human being to act against your own interests and purposes, viewing such an inclination as the product of cultural conditioning is what Freudian logic said. But opposed to this is the concept of compassion. And I was talking to you about radical compassion. Now I bring you to what is more important for you, which is self-compassion. Now, Kristen Neff defines self-compassion as being composed of three main components. One is self-kindness, the second is common humanity, and the third is mindfulness. When we talk of self-kindness, we talk of being warm to ourselves. When should we be warm to ourselves? Towards ourselves, when we encounter pain, when we encounter personal shortcomings, when we find ourselves lacking. We must not hurt ourselves. Do not self-criticize. Please understand, young people, that self-compassion is extremely important. And for that, self-kindness is primary. Don't criticize yourself. Don't self-flagellate. Don't blame yourself all the time. Half the time, we are blaming ourselves for not being good at this, not being good at that, not being able to do this. Be warm towards yourself. Be warm towards oneself, especially when you're encountering pain, especially in a situation like the pandemic. Say, especially in situations where you find yourself, your patience tried and tested. Don't think that you lack anything. Don't hurt yourself. And then you come to the point of common humanity. Now, when you first be good to yourself, and then you look around. So you look around and you see your grandparents in a situation. You see your parents in a particular situation. You see difficult financial situations around you. You see what is happening in the pandemic in the city around you. And you are able to relate with that because you recognize that suffering and personal failure is not just your lot. Every single living human being, every single human being suffers. Every single human being has personal failure. It is part of the shared human experience with other human beings. So you have to understand that within self-compassion is the concept of common humanity. The minute you can connect that your shortcoming is not just yours, it's not something for which you need to punish yourself, that others too suffer from it, then you will find that something different will begin to happen. And the third and the most important is mindfulness. Mindfulness is of extreme importance, and I will say this again and again, that what you need to do during these times is to be mindful. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a psychological process. It's a process of purposely bringing your attention to the experiences occurring in the present. What is happening in the present moment? And you have to observe it, bring your attention to it without any judgment. It's bad, it's good, it's horrible, it's terrible. No, it is happening to me. I am in the middle of the pandemic. I'm confined to my home. I have an aging mother. I have to look after her. There are issues. I can't have people helping me. I can't get a house help. Stop judging. That's responsibility and emotional resilience. And isn't this what all of us are looking for during the pandemic? Isn't this what we need to develop? Isn't this what we are going to be worried about in the years to come while we struggle with the pandemic, the impact of the pandemic, by the time it wears off? In my opinion, I think we are looking forward to another year where the pandemic, until and unless the vaccine comes, is not going to go. So for you, what is going to be the path? How are you going to be more creative? How are you going to be more responsive? What is it that you need to do? You need to deal with being more mindful. That is the first thing that you need to do. So what do you do during the pandemic? How do you conduct yourself? Practice empathy. I just talked about it. I'm just giving you 10 points. Practice empathy. Stay connected with people. How do you practice empathy? Because empathy is an emotional skill, and it's an emotional skill that can be learned. Learn to be empathetic to people. Listen to others. Engage in active service. Do something for your mate. Do something for your grandparent. Do something for somebody else. Observe others' actions. Put yourself in your other's place, and then you decide. Second thing is stay connected. Self-distancing, self-isolation, quarantine, all these words have come to grip us so deeply. Why don't you use all this for focusing on yourself? Why don't you use it for focusing on the family? Why don't you creatively look at how the family situation can be dealt with within this framework? Caring for others, helps to fight isolation. You can talk to your grandparents, you can talk to your parents, you can communicate with friends. You don't be emotionally distant. Please learn to be aware, learn to engage. How has the pandemic affected you? Don't withdraw. Come out. Be more social. Be aware. Be kind to people. Look after people who are there around you. See what they want. See what you can do for them. It's so important. Be considerate. Don't criticize others. Somebody is doing something during a pandemic, however small it may be. And then you have this comment to give, she's trying to do this for this reason, for that reason. No, do not criticize others. Don't criticize the efforts of others and their responses. Remember, everyone copes differently. So if somebody is panicking, you should be the person who should be able to calm them down. So stop being judgmental. You can't control how others behave. Let go of your core values. You become more mean, you become judgmental, you become unkind, you become harsh, your panic can create all those negative things. Don't do that. And finally, savor gratitude. Be grateful you are alive. Be grateful you have that little money to have food. Be grateful that you are not a part of the pandemic, in the sense that you are not suffering from corona yourself, that you've been able to protect yourself, that your family is safe. Enjoy the small things of life. Nature, beauty, birds. Just go out into the garden. You go out into your balcony. Just look at a flower, look at a plant. See how the smell, the sun, look at all that. That's what you need to do. And so when you talk of mass energy, the challenges before you, I hope I've been able to address what the challenges before you are. The greatest challenge in the pandemic is to keep yourself together and to keep your spirits elevated, to have sustenance within you, physical sustenance, emotional sustenance, spiritual sustenance, to have the courage, and to keep working towards your livelihood. How would you work towards your livelihood? Get your mastery of the subject, have a purpose, have autonomy, and at the same time, self-care, self-love, good mental health. Finally, you were talking about entrepreneurship. I'll very quickly, for half a minute, talk to you about entrepreneurship during this time. Within this whole framework, I've built in the element of the entrepreneurship. What is entrepreneurship? It is the willingness to identify a problem and to creatively find a solution. That's how I see entrepreneurship. There is a problem and you need to creatively find a solution for it. And you have to realize it through creation. You have to create a solution. So as I mentioned earlier, the problem and tasks students should address are determined by their context and the problems that they're observing. So if you've got open defecation around you, or you've got something else, hungry people, poverty-stricken, no homes, whatever it is. The professional and academic skill sets that you have acquired, will help you to, develop the spirit and sustenance that are an important requirement if you seek to make the lives of others better. Any work you do, when I became a teacher, it's to make the life of my students better. If I become a doctor, I have to make the lives of others better. Whatever work you do is of service to society. It is not just to generate jobs for yourself. The point I'm trying to make is, it's not just about just making a life for yourself. It has to be a life for others. How do you do that? So the spirit and sustenance is a requirement if you seek to make the lives of others better. Now, it can be through generating it for others. You make a for-profit venture. or you can pursue a non-profit direction. You can work with NGOs, you can do something. And what has to drive you is the welfare of others and the welfare of society in mind. Now, if you keep all that together,
we all are eagerly waiting to listen to her. So yeah, with this we come to the end of the first half of the valedictory session. So I would be passing on the baton back to your organizing secretary, Dr. Niloy Mukherjee, who is going to be your host for the second half of the session with Ms. Rashidal. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Riddhi, for doing this with us. Thank you on the part of the organization and from my side as well. And thank you, Professor Pandey, once again on behalf of the foundation. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. With that, we move on to our next speaker of the day, Ms. Rashi Lal, who is here to talk about youth and COVID-19. I would request Dr. Alka Singh to please introduce the speaker in a few words. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you once again, Dr. Niloy, Dr. Riddhi. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor Pandey. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful session in the first half of the valedictory today. It is time to welcome a very young, dynamic, an editor, reporter, and indeed a beautiful mind, heart, and soul. Rashi Dalji, bahut namaskar aapko. Extending warm greetings, love, and of course, the foundation is obliged to have you today. And I assure you that Expressions in Languages and Arts Foundation, Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh, would definitely do something to provide you some kind of beautiful stories that you might want to, take up for the kind of the researches, editing work, the kind of the news article you keep publishing, touching the heart and mind of the people. राशि लाल जी आपको सभी लोगों की तरफ से Expressions in Languages, Arts and Foundation on behalf of Chairman, Board of Advisors that constitute people from Nigeria, constitute people from Boston, USA, Canada, of course, Indonesia and other parts of the globe. On behalf of Dr. Arun, Dr. Niloy, on behalf of Professor Ravindra Pratap Singh, I heartily welcome you to deliberate upon specifically youth and COVID-19. To share with the audience today, scholars and participants, I also would like to share that, Rashi's area of that we have. I heartily welcome you, Rashi ji, and thank you so much for taking out time to be part of this kind of it's been very, very kind of you, a kind gesture from the side of you. Whenever I have given you a call, you have taken keenly. In fact, I would like to share with the scholars and participants today that whenever I had put myself into conversation with Rashi ji, the assistant news editor from the Times of India, the largest daily news read, we know that what kind of paper it is and how do we look up to it so far as the news and the articles and so far as the issues related to the social lives and the other parts of the economy, the culture and the other, of course, areas concerning to the policies of the country and its implementation is concerned. Rashi ji has been very, very keen in answering to the question. She has been very, very prudent in selection of the text before she edits any news article that she sees before her text. I heartily welcome you, ma'am, for today's concluding session of the valedictory, and really feel obliged to have with you us you join us with so much so decency, with so much so agreeing, the gesture that you usually have, that it left me with no words to some time to put myself in the furtherance of the the talk that I really want. I actually believe and trust that you would carry us to a more fruitful ending, putting your remarks, your insights for the furtherance of the topic ahead. Thank you so much, Rashidi, and heartily welcome you to the second part of the valedictory speech.
Thank you, Professor Singh. Is my audio okay?
Yeah. Very clear, very much clear.
Thank you, Professor Alka Singh, and congratulations that you've been organizing this series of workshops on so many aspects of the pandemic. I think there would be no topic that is left untouched by this foundation in the people that it invites and how the issues that you take up. Congratulations.
Ma'am, if that comes from you, that's a huge compliment that the foundation has received. Thank you so much.
Absolutely a fact. And before I say anything else, I would just want to add that it's more than an honor to be speaking alongside Professor Nishi Pandey. She has been an inspiration not only for me but for so many women, especially women, men and women both, but especially women, not only in Lucknow but all over the state, all over the country. So it's a great honor. Thank you for having me with her. And thank you to all those people who have joined on a Sunday night. It means a lot to have so many people listening to us because, it's such a time that everybody looks forward to just spend Sunday, doing their own thing. But it's very credible for the foundation to have so many people on a Sunday night listening to this. So, talking about youth and COVID-19, youth and the pandemic, it was a very wide topic. So I was wondering, what we could take up. So I would try and bring in some stories because I like to talk by telling stories. That I think makes any conversation interesting. And it's also because the kind of work that I do, I believe that being a storyteller is very important for every journalist. So I would include some stories, and I hope that those can serve as an inspiration, as lessons for all of us. As Professor Pandey very rightly said, what we choose to do with this time, what we choose to do with this situation is in our hands. The situation of the pandemic and whatever it has done may not be in our control, but how we react is definitely in our control. So for all those, talking about youth would include a large segment of people born in the last 20, 30 years. For all of those people, life has till now, it had been full of examples of human endeavor, excellence, and pushing the limit, dreaming big and even achieving those dreams because they believe that they could do everything with the help of the networks that they have, the presence of the media, the presence of technology, the use of technology, and the access to all the technology and the media and every corner of the world that they could reach. So till now, it had been a sense of, being able to change things, being able to be successful at what they do, and being in control of these things. They had this, they had a belief of being invincible. You and Professor Pandey both deal with students daily. So you would know that, students today, young people today, do have that air around themselves that they can do everything. They can achieve. Their confidence is very, very high. So they had seen technology win so many battles of humanity, be it hunger or illiteracy or natural calamities. They had not seen any big war because whenever such a situation would arrive, international bodies and international engagement would prevent that too. Whatever natural calamities they have seen were also managed, with the best of resources, with the best of technology, with international help coming in, the world working as one big group. They had also seen poverty rates go down, poverty alleviation, food shortages being solved, all with the use of, contribution of technology, communication, networking, globalization. But when COVID-19 happened, I think it was a big, setback that shattered their confidence, their everyday life, their routine in the beginning of this year itself, because one microorganism had changed the entire world, and it continues to do so as we are seeing. So the COVID-19 crisis was one which no technology, no hi-fi jobs, no social media, no science, nothing could handle. All the hope, all the savviness, everything that we challenged all our problems with did not seem to work this one time. Even science is fighting it even till today and hasn't been able to defeat it. We are still looking for a vaccine. Not only their own lives, but their parents, their families, children, because I'm saying children because, this is the group age between 20 and 30, which has young children. So many of my friends, my colleagues have young children who are in their 20s or in their 30s. And the effect on children has been one which is very, very grave. There have been so many articles about how children who've gone to school for the first time have been taught that the first lesson that they're taught is about muting themselves, which is very, very sad. The effect that it will have on their psyche is, one that is very grave and very serious, which will last for a long time. So that is also an issue which directly affects the youth. So it was something that affected us in such a traumatic way, because there were job losses, there were pay cuts, there were losses of opportunities. Schools and colleges were shut. People had plans for their career which were shattered. There was hospital trauma. People lost their loved ones. We saw that in many European countries, the number of elderly people who died was huge. And in so many families, grandparents were gone in days. So I'm sure we all know somebody who has lost a loved one to this disease. So the entire world came crumbling down, and the sense of losing control on what we were doing, on what our plans for the future were, on what we plan to do, that was lost. There was the sense of control was being lost day by day, and at the end of it, many people have actually given up, resigned, that okay, I'll see whatever happens. Jo hoga dekha jayega. I'm not going to plan anything because I planned so much. I plan to change my job. I plan to apply to this college. I plan to study again, and nothing worked out because this happened. So this situation did make everyone feel that things were going out of hand, and nothing would ever improve again. I remember that in March, a lot of us would think of how unprecedented the situation was and how there was no hope. People had started thinking about what they would do at all. They had started clinging on to the money that they had. They had started taking counseling because there was depression and anxiety was increasing so much. We have had so many stories of psychologists and counselors and psychiatrists saying that there was a surge in such patients and in people who had never experienced anxiety but were very, very anxious when the lockdown was imposed. But moving on and hope is, the only thing that keeps us alive. And despite youngsters cracking under pressure, despite the emotional trauma, the loneliness, the relationship breakdown, the challenges of work from home, all the professional uncertainty and the bleak future of students, the youth has and will always be a symbol of hope. The change and resurgence that it was bound to come, and it is here. We are seeing that after the initial shock and setbacks, the youth has started fighting back because there is no other choice. You have to fight back. We have to live. We have to change the negative to the positive. So people have found new opportunities, new ways to learn. They found ways to do good, to help others, create startups, make the most of technology, change to improve their own lives as well as that of others. So as I said, I will talk about stories. I will give you a few examples of people who have made the best use of this time, the best of this, the best of tragedy, the best of calamity. I would begin by telling you about this young person, 18-year-old commerce student, college student here in Lucknow itself, and what he did for the migrant workers. Now, we all know about the migrant worker crisis, and we all remember pictures of how on one bus, in one train, hundreds and thousands of migrant workers from so many states had returned to states like UP and Bihar and Chhattisgarh. And they had lost jobs, they had no money, there had so many people died on the way, they walked, there was no transport available. There was no hope of getting back jobs. Now, of course, the situation started to go back to normal, but it has been a trauma for so many thousands of people. So many people took, as Professor Pandey said, that many people saw the human side in themselves, which they did not realize earlier, and they started helping people. There were drives of food donation. So many people, we saw celebrities, people like Sonu Sood and Amitabh Bachchan arranging for tickets for migrants, and so many such efforts. So many people gave jobs to migrants. So many campaigns were run. Now, this one example that I am talking about is a social impact venture by an 18-year-old student. It became a platform for connecting workers with prospective employers to reduce the rate of unemployment. The boy's name is Akshat Mittal, and the portal that he created is called Bharat Shramik. It's a Noida-based pan-India platform which has got more than 40,000 laborers registered in its database all over the country. And he says that, there was so much written about laborers going back to their hometowns and walking on foot. But the real problem was them losing jobs. I was shocked by the great labor crisis. There were factories and entrepreneurs restarting work, but laborers had migrated. This is why I started Bharat Shramik. What his portal does is actually fairly simple. We all know about, apps like which exist for dating or for marriage, for weddings, which match people of their choice to other people. So one person sets up a profile, and I'm sure all young people know about this. One person sets a profile, and the person you like back can, send a message to you and then connect with you. And then it goes forward. What he did was using this simple platform, but the parties involved here were laborers and employers. He created a portal. He asked laborers to register. Now, laborers may not be tech savvy, so what he did was he gave a phone number. He publicized it. They had to just call on that phone number and just follow the instructions. No smartphone was needed. Nothing fancy was needed. So these people registered themselves, and the employers who had the facility to look at data, to see the list of people who had registered. Now the laborers who had registered could be cooks, construction workers, masons, potters, whatever. And they could then contact this laborer wherever he or she was and give employment to them. So now the effort has become so popular that big companies have started approaching them, and it has become the first of its kind database for such laborers who lost an opportunity, who lost jobs. And now they have, they have hope of gaining employment. They have hope of being recorded somewhere. And it is a huge change that this boy has brought. All of 18 years old, it was only his imagination, isn't it? So he saw an opportunity. He made use of innovation, of the facilities that he had, his education and technology, and he has created something that is of immense value. So the lesson that I am trying to focus on here is that this was innovation driven by sensitivity and empathy, and it wasn't really something that required a very deep sense of technological knowledge or some very technical know-how. It was just an idea, and he would have proposed it probably to one website maker, one designer, and there it was. With a few people, a small team, there was something that can change the life of so many laborers. So this was one such example. To just say that youth can choose to make a difference by delving into innovation, by delving into driving a change, by delving into creating something. The second example is a simpler one, and that also has it also reflects on something that Professor Pandey had mentioned about the online courses that are available these days. So many of us have enrolled in so many courses. A lot of us have enrolled in courses but not finished them, not started them, left them midway. But a lot of people, of course, have added to their knowledge and started something new, learned something new with the courses that they joined, because online courses were never as popular as they are today. This example that I'm talking about is of a woman named Arti Raghunath. She is 20 years old and she's from Kerala. She's a student of biochemistry in the second year of college, and she has created a world record. Some of you might have heard of what she's done. The world record that she has created is of completing 350 online courses. Those courses are on various topics, different topics, and from different universities, international universities. She has certificates from University of Rochester, University of Virginia, University of New York, and many others. 350 courses she has completed, and she wanted to do this because she said that whenever the day she learned about online courses, she wanted to spend this time not on watching any TV series or a web series, or not on any social media or anything else, but on educating herself, on gaining knowledge. So, as I said, this is an example of using this time to educate yourself, to gain knowledge, and to make use of whatever facilities you have to create value. This was a choice that she made, we could say that very easily. It was, she could have, she had so much free time, as we all do. So many college students have free time that they've never had. So many have gone home. But how many of them have, made an effort to really make a difference to their own life or to that of others? We all have that choice, don't we? So what you do is the reflection of what course your life will take. And with these people, with such examples, we can take inspiration and then become examples of, I'm talking about youth and COVID-19. These people became examples for me. So there are so many others who can become examples, and they'll probably create history. The third thing, I have been talking about technology a lot because, the technology has never been as available to us as it is now. It's in our phones, it's in our hand at one click of one button. But the third example that I have is not of technology. It is actually of a very interesting hack. Now, I'll show you a picture and go from there. This is
for being with us. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun.
Thank you.
Good night.
Now you may leave. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Rashid ma'am. Thank you, Nishi Pandey ma'am. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
guys.
Thank you, ma'am.